Now, catching a cold is largely seen as a winter problem, but can this happen in the summer?
Yeah.
Apparently it can.
Well, according to health experts, we're already seeing a spike in cold and flu symptoms due to restrictions lifting and us all coming back in contact with each other. So Dr Philippa joins us now to explain more. Morning, Dr Philippa.
Morning. Morning.
So first things first, is a summer cold any different to a cold?
No, a cold is a cold, be it any season
Really?
of the year, and they're all caused by viruses. And traditionally, we get more in the winter because we're inside, cooped up together. And actually, this year, we didn't because of all the social distancing rules and the lockdown and the restrictions and the masks. And as things ease and we spend more time together, then other viruses, apart from coronavirus, are going to spread. So coughs and colds are back.
So there's no difference whatsoever?
No, a cold
Because
is a
I'm sure, I'm sure, sometimes when my son goes out and he doesn't wear a coat, he comes back sniffling, sneezing. Is that just hay fever?
So that is a really common myth. You can't get a cold because you're cold. You can't get a cold because you've got wet hair, all those things that your mother told you. No, they are viruses. And it takes a little while to incubate them anyway. So even if he went out, he's come back in, but he caught it a few days ago.
So what are the symptoms to a cold then?
So most of us will have had a cold at some point, right? So we're going to get a little bit sniffly, runny nose, sneezing, headaches, sore throat, fever, aches and pains you can get. Now, it's really important to remember that coronavirus is still out there. So if you have any of the symptoms of coronavirus, temperature, new cough, or loss of taste of sense or loss of sense of taste or smell, that you get a proper PCR swab. So not a lateral flow test. Those are only if you are asymptomatic. But if you have any of those symptoms, it still could be COVID.
Yeah.
As soon as I'm sneezing, I'm straight on that COVID test. I'm all over it. I've got my tests.
So how do you differentiate between what's hay fever and what's a cold?
So hay fever is an allergy, and lots of us will have hay fever.
You can feel it feels different, doesn't it?
At this time of the year. So some people will say that it feels different and that they know that they always get, for example, streaming itchy eyes. And other people get very similar symptoms. They get runny nose. But it's classical for them at the same time, often each year, when whatever it is that they're allergic to comes into pollination and comes into flower. And so you'll get itchy, runny, red eyes, itchy, streaming nose. You can get a cough and you can get wheezy. And they respond to things like antihistamines and steroid nose sprays. And coughs and colds don't respond to antihistamines.
Yeah. So what should you be doing when you've got a cold?
So the first thing you should not be doing is asking for antibiotics, because antibiotics works for bacteria, they don't work for viruses. You need to be staying at home, plenty of rest, paracetamol, lots and lots to drink. You can use steam inhalation, really helps get all of that moving. You can use a decongestant for a few days. Only if you use it for more than about a week, it can actually lead to a rebound congestion. Gargling with salt water and all those things like lemon and honey drinks to soothe a sore throat.
Yeah.
What about the spread of it? How can we prevent the spread and pass it on to our family members and our loved ones and friends?
We've all learnt to be quite good at this year,
yeah,
right? So the phrase used to be catch it and bin it. So you want to be sneezing into a tissue, putting that tissue in the bin, washing your hands. So really good hand hygiene. Lots of us, actually, it's not just about being coughed or sneezed on. It's about the fact that you cough or sneeze onto something or onto your hand. You touch the doorknob, somebody else touches that doorknob and then touches their face. So really good hand hygiene, and the distancing is still going to protect us for a little while yet.
This is the thing, when I was reading my notes, I thought, well, hang on, is it good that we're not getting colds, or is it good to get a cold once a year because you then become immune to it for the rest of the year? I know that doesn't make sense, but because we're in a situation sort of with COVID now where we're so well versed in doing this. Like, I was just actually thinking about my son, who's just got his first cold, because he's building up his immunity from scratch,
Right, so what's really common, actually, is that children have more colds than adults do, and because their immune systems haven't been exposed to so many.
Right.
And what we know is that the average child will have 6 to 8 coughs or colds every year, generally between about September and June, right? And that means that they have 2 trails of snot what feels like the entire time, right? Any parent will be like, my kids
I
are
hate
just
that. I was
snot
literally wiping my
monsters.
face all
But
the time.
actually, that primes their immune system, and we know that it even decreases the incidence of childhood leukemia. So actually, this exposure of the immune system to these viruses is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah,
but as a parent, I feel you for the crying in the middle of the night.
But does that extend to adulthood as well? I mean, is it bad to get a cold? Like, you know, because if you're not getting a cold, then because of, you know, the social distancing and whatnot, when it does come back, does it come back with a vengeance?
So I think when you've got an adult immune system, you've got a mature immune system, and there isn't evidence that it affects the same way, but it definitely is for all those babies that haven't been exposed. These are going to be their first sort of exposures, and when their siblings come home from school with it. But having an immune system that works is really important, and essentially, you know, your colds show you that it's doing, and when you don't feel well, that temperature is actually your immune system working. It isn't the virus that's doing that. It's your body going, this is how I'm going to kill the virus.
So, bear in mind, this question's coming from a man, but how can you tell the difference between cold and flu?
So
or man flu. Yeah, exactly.
Or man flu. So flu is actually a very serious illness, and influenza does unfortunately kill people every single year. And so lots of people will use those two terms sort of interchangeably, but when you have a cold, it's a few days, and you might have a temperature, but you feel okay. But with influenza, my patients describe it almost like being hit by a truck, and that the overwhelming fatigue, a high fever that stays for days, often difficulties breathing, severe aches and pains. So it's a much more severe illness, and that's why we do have a flu vaccine, and the government have said that this year that will be offered to everybody over the age of 50, as well as all pregnant women and people with chronic health conditions.
Just to go through a couple of the common myths about the cold. I need vitamin C. True or not true?
So if you're vitamin C deficient, then OK. But for most of us who are eating a healthy diet, lots of colours in your diet, then vitamin C is a soluble vitamin, a water-soluble vitamin. If you take more than you need, you're going to literally pee it out.
Really?
OK.
So lots of broccoli, some oranges.
All fruits and veg.
Second one, wet hair, and this is kind of, we touched on this a little earlier, all being outside will get you a chill, could catch a cold. If not a cold then, can people still get chills from that? People still get ill if they're outside and then...
So I think it depends what you mean by the chills, because people often say chills when they mean a temperature.
Right.
But, you know, it's going to make you a little bit cold and miserable, but it shouldn't really make you unwell.
OK. And lastly, well, I think we know the answer to this. Can you catch a cold from someone sneezing and coughing on you?
You can, but that's not the only way. And so the reason that these things spread like wildfire around nurseries, and, you know, and all our kids bring them home, is literally they go... and then they pick up a toy, and then the next kid picks up the toy, puts it straight in their mouth. So it's not just about breathing, it's about touching and hand hygiene as well.
Oh, brilliant. So generally with a cold, do we need to go to the doctors, or we can manage this ourselves?
So for most people, they will be able to manage at home on their own with paracetamol and fluids. But if you have a child that you are concerned about, that they stop drinking, they stop urinating, if you have difficulties breathing, if you have chest pain, if you cough up blood, then it's definitely time that you seek medical advice.
Dr Philippa, amazing.
She's done it again. I feel relaxed now.
Do you feel safe?
Yes, nice and chill.
Safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr Philippa.